Cześć. Jak się macie? I've been trying to work on my Polish, but I've been told that I have a Google Translate accent now, so I need to work a bit harder. I've been, the last 2 or 3 years, I've been at a conference in Warsaw, and the first year we went there, it was in the Mobiconf. Fantastic venue, really good conference. The next year I went back, and I thought I knew exactly where I was going because it was in Mobiconf again. And that's when I found out that meant cinema, and I had to really quickly get a taxi somewhere else. So, smuggling whiskey and building agility with design sprints. So this is quite an interactive talk. So we're going to want to get some feedback over the course. So what you'll find here, if any of you have access to your mobile phones, you can go to menti.com and punch in that code. And then over the course of the talk, we'll be able to get some feedback on some of the things that we're looking at here. So I'll tell you a little bit about the background of what we're going to do, and hopefully we'll slowly start to see some opinions coming in here about how much experience you have with design sprints, or whether you're really just here because you heard the word whiskey in the name. I've been doing a range of different design sprints for quite some time, quite often with large enterprises. Most people tend to know them for the purposes of exploring rapidly a problem space or an opportunity space. And we're going to look quite a lot at that in the next short while. But at the same time, I tend to find it very useful in enterprises for starting to change people's mindsets about the pace of how they should be working and how quickly and easily they can get user feedback instead of investing a huge amount of money, time, and organizational resource before really knowing that the business impact or the customer impact is going to be there. So here we can see we've got not very many people done a design sprint, so this hopefully will be useful for you. Hopefully you'll find out a bit more about the kind of 5-day rapid process for exploring different spaces. A few experts in here, and you can tell by my Scottish accent, many people liking the whiskey. I'm a big fan of that, so that's good. Everything that you see in here, if you want to explore these in your own organizations, you'll find out everything that you need to know in this book by Jake Knapp. Jake came up with the design sprint process when he was working at Google. And it's really flexible, it's really useful, but quite honestly, if you want to try this out, that book is all that you need to take away from this talk. Now, this is something that we tend to be pretty bad at in our organizations. Arnold Rothstein was a mobster back in 1920s America, right about the time when prohibition, so the banning of alcohol, came around. So you weren't able to sell, or you weren't allowed to sell, and you weren't allowed to purchase alcohol. But Arnold Rothstein, he was a particularly enterprising mobster. He's broadly thought of as being the founding father of organized crime. And he saw the opportunity in Prohibition to import whiskey into America and sell it to the high society. But his idea was, although he was a prolific gambler and he made his money from crime, he never ever used to bet on something that he wasn't 100% sure he was going to make a return on. And that's where we often go wrong in our organizations today. So I thought, to explore the idea of design sprints, what if we considered what would happen if 1920s prohibition came about today? With all of our modern technology, our modern practices, our modern cultures and ways of thinking about things, would Arnold Rothstein and his band of cronies, would they do things anything different to what they did back in the 1920s? So to start to explore this idea, of course, we need our team. We need the team that's going to come along on the design sprint. So you've got Rothstein himself. So, AKA the brain, AKA the big fix. He really was the founding father of modern crime and organized crime. He was even rumored to have fixed the 1919 World Series baseball. So really somebody who liked to make sure he edged his bets and made sure he got the return that he wanted. And he's also, in this case, somebody who understands high society. He knows the people that he wants to be selling the whiskey products to. And then we've got Al Capone. This beautiful picture of him, known as Scarface, you can see his scar down there. I think this was when he was about to go on holiday to Alcatraz high security prison. What a lot of people don't know about Al Capone is he was actually fantastic at PR. He used to also organise boxing events, and he even ran soup kitchens. So for the poor people in society back in 1920s America, he used to actually feed the poor, and he had a fantastic reputation among those people. Virginia Hill, Time magazine once called her the queen of gangster malls. However, she was particularly ruthless herself. So she was believed by the FBI essentially to be a central clearinghouse for intelligence about the mob. She knew everything that was going on. She was able to manipulate and work all of the logistics to get all of the different bits of crime activity working the right way. Lucky Luciano, he was essentially the first boss of the Genovese crime family, so a particularly dangerous leader. And one of his close cronies, Frank Costello, he took over the ownership of the Genovese family at one point. You've got Mayor Lansky, known as the mob's accountant, and he set up a massive global gambling empire. It spanned the whole world. It was quite incredible. And then finally, on our design sprint team, we've got Ma Barker. Ma Barker was the mother, but also the main organizer behind the Barker Street crime family. Ferocious woman, believed to be really the most vicious, dangerous, and resourceful criminal of her decade. So here we go, not unlike probably the executives in most organizations that we work with. A particularly ruthless team, but the key thing here, and this is something to remember for a design sprint, is there's a broad mix of skills from understanding customer, accountancy, a bit about PR, there's leadership, there's all different types of people that are in this mix for the single week. So we're going to start with the first design sprint, and over the next 20 minutes or so, we're actually going to simulate 3 design sprints. So you'll hopefully start to get a feel for what's the process and what are the types of things that we can start to explore in that time. So Monday of the first design sprint. We start, of course, by explaining what the process is going to be. So the Monday, the first day of the design sprint, all we're doing is we're looking to map out the problem or the opportunity space. This is a time where we're going to start to understand in more detail all of the different things that quite often in our enterprises takes a 6-month pre-study or a significant amount of contribution in itself. By the Tuesday, we're starting to sketch out potential solutions and look at different sketches to solutions from other industries and from other companies so that we can start to understand what do we want to prototype, what do we want to get user feedback from within that single 5-day process. And that's a key thing. With a design sprint, we want to get out in front of customers by the end of this week. We don't want to commission a full-year build or a 2-year build. We want to know by the end of this week, this looks good for a customer, or this really doesn't land well at all. So by the Wednesday, once we've sketched and once we've understood the problem space, this is the first point where we're starting to say, let's decide what particular aspect of this problem space we're actually going to explore here. Because we want to narrow the scope and go really deep in a particular area. And we do that by prototyping. So some of the examples that you'll see just shortly in here, all of you people in this room who build products and services on an ongoing basis, you'll look at this and you will know that it's fake. But you would be incredibly surprised when you speak with people, real customers, real users out there in the wild. They can be incredibly easy to almost trick into thinking that something is real and something's an actual product already. And then finally on the Friday, so over that rapid 5-day period, we've got to a point where we have a high-quality prototype that we can put in front of a number of different customers and get real feedback on whether or not that would solve their problem or it would be useful before we've invested a huge amount of organizational time and resource. So, the next stage, Arnold Rothstein himself kicks open the design sprint and he says, there's going to be a growing demand for good whiskey during Prohibition. And when I say good whiskey, that is exactly what I mean. I'm not talking about the rot-gut rubbish that you and your friends are making in chamber pots down in the Lower East Side. I'm talking about the very best whiskey from Scotland. There is a fortune to be made from importing this stuff. Now, as you know, I mix with the high society. I know what they want, and I know that they have money. It's going to be the fine thing among high society to vie for having the very best whiskey and to impress their guests when they come to their houses. But before we go any further, I want to import a very important thing. We must maintain a reputation for selling only the very highest quality whiskey. And with that, Rothstein has explained to all of the people who are coming along the design sprint exactly what they're going to be going after in this week. Essentially, the long-term ambition, their objective, is the supply of high-quality whiskey to society people. And this is a good thing about design sprints. Unlike many of the kind of modern developments and products and services that we have, where we're always trying to constrain the scope, really the opportunity here is over a fixed amount of time and a fixed amount of investment, you get to go really big and really wide and explore some really fantastic opportunities. It's as expensive to explore something as wide as high supply of high-quality whiskey to society people as it is to explore shifting a button 3 pixels to the left. So you can go really wide and really ambitious. But in Rothstein's opening chat, there's a huge amount of assumptions. So firstly, it's a big assumption that demand for good whiskey will actually grow during Prohibition. Is it really going to be chic to serve guests with good whiskey? Will the rich really compete to serve lavish whiskey to their guests? It's a big assumption. The types of things that we don't find out until really late in our typical enterprise developments. And perhaps most importantly, do we really think that people are going to ignore prohibition law and risk going to jail because they want to have whiskey? Some massive assumptions here, but this allows us, within the design sprint, to start to vote, to take on a very democratic process and say, how do we now decide which of these things are the most important assumptions to focus on and start to understand whether or not this is going to be a useful product to build for our customers? So in this case, in sprint number 1, Rothstein and all of his cronies has decided that they want to focus on, will people ignore prohibition laws? So fantastic. We're maybe halfway through the Monday. We've understood a little bit about what we want to do, what's the objective, and we've started to understand what one of the key assumptions are. So now it's time to start mapping out the process. What does it look like for a customer to go from wanting whiskey to having whiskey in their hands? So here, a society person essentially has to ask for options. So someone within Rothstein's crew is going to have to receive those options. They're probably going to have to speak to some kind of distribution manager or someone in logistics to understand what stock is available, what's come all the way from Scotland recently. This is then going to have to go back to the customer, back to the society person and say, these are your options, what would you like? This is what some other people in high society have. Do you want to be unique? And tackle some of those difficult conversations. And then after that, we're going to have to confirm an order once we know what we want, arrange delivery, and then hopefully at some point after that, we receive whiskey in our hands. Great progress. Now, the key thing here is, despite having a huge amount of skill and talent within that room, you're never ever going to have all of the answers that you need. It's not because not everyone in the room understands the process or how the business works, simply because they don't have access to every part of the business. They don't do every role. So here, for example, we would phone in some experts. In this case, perhaps they phone someone from the FBI, and they say, unless you make sure we get our bribes, you ain't getting any whiskey passed. So, there can be all different types of wee things, wee snags that we need to make sure is part of that overall map. Now, while Rothstein and his crew are working through this process, they're building out different opportunities or problems that they might spot. And they do this with a practice called How Might We? So, for example, here they say, how might we, in the top left corner, provide easier payment options? People probably don't want to be tracked when they've made a payment. They probably don't want to be exchanging cash in public with someone. That looks particularly strange during Prohibition. But there could be any wide range of different things that we might want to build these how might we's around. And then towards the end of the Monday, what we start to be able to do is organise these into different types of problems we might want to explore in this single 5 days. So how do we help our customers identify what types of products that they want? How can we help them order more effectively? How can we get those products through prohibition infrastructure and FBI watching and so on to the customers? Can we partner? How do we build trust? Key different areas that are really important for the success of selling that high quality product. And again, having some pretty dangerous people in the room, we want to be fairly democratic and leave the guns at the door. So we go back to our dot voting. What are the key things that we want to explore this week around supply of whisky? And we're saying here there are some key options that are coming out that satisfy key aspects of that overall map. So sprint number 1, we're getting towards the end of the first day. All we've done at this point is identify that there is an issue here, and we want to be able to ensure that our customers feel that they get the best whisky for them. How do we help match the best whisky with people in high society that are looking for it? So day number 2, we've only now got to the point where we can start to sketch. So we start to look at some of the different solutions that other industries and other businesses perhaps are taking on board. And then we start to sketch some solutions for ourselves. So in this case, perhaps, we've got some kind of website or kind of mobile site where people can go in and say the types of products that they're interested in and search and filter. Probably not the best idea during Prohibition. Someone else has come up with a bot. I don't think there's any enterprise that hasn't got a bot being developed somewhere these days. So someone's banging on, we should get a bot out there. And somebody else comes up with the idea of some kind of selector based on lifestyle choices. So if, for example, you're looking for whisky, perhaps by knowing the types of things you like to do in your spare time or the flavours and tastes that you like in other areas, we can start to match you with some whiskies that you like. So moving on to the next day, we're on to the Wednesday, halfway through the first week. And now we're able to decide which of these things do we really want to get in front of customers for feedback this week. So after dot voting, it's a real common thing that you see over the course of design sprints. We get to the point of realizing we want to prototype this particular app. So the Wednesday afternoon essentially becomes dedicated to storyboarding. So we want this to appear realistic. So it's going to start from the position of being in the App Store. At that point, someone's going to install the app. In this case, we're going to call it Schlangevaar, which in Scottish means good health, a fairly famous toast. And then from there, we're going to build out some different potential screens so that people can come in and start to select what their preferred options would be. So they might have some options between delicate and smoky tastes, tranquil and wild options, perhaps light and rich flavours. Various different things that possibly are unrelated to whisky, but will allow us to help to filter things down for the customer. So, prototyping. This is where it starts to break from traditional development. Realistically, we're looking to, in a single day, get a high-quality prototype developed that we can put in front of customers and get some good feedback. So here I've used a couple of tools, InVision and Sketch. Now, I would call it here that I come from an engineering background. I'm not a designer, so apologies to all the designers in the room. But this is a kind of thing that you can come up with. So here, what you see is my iPhone with the app installed, InVision installed. Everything you see now is fake. I've faked this up using InVision, and then essentially we script out that customer interaction so that we can try, even the search here, this is all entirely faked and scripted, so we can start to test and see what customers, when they put this in their hands, really think about the app. So here we've managed to install it, and now we're starting to use the app itself. So do you like delicate or smoky flavours? Do you like tranquil or wild situations or environments? Do you like light or rich flavours? Not really anything related to whisky, but nonetheless, it's a tool, a kind of high funnel type tool that could help people select the types of things that they're interested in. Like I say, I'm not a designer, but to build something like this took me 3 or 4 hours. It's really not difficult. It's pretty fast to prototype. So we have a prototype. We've got an interaction that's scripted out, and we can start to put this in front of customers. So I said that this would be fairly interactive today. So this is a first opportunity for you to start to give us back some feedback. So looking at that prototype, if you had an app in your hand that allowed you to select different types of flavors, tastes, and so on, and that then gave you back some recommendations for whiskey that might be good for you, would that be useful? If you can punch in any words, might be useful, might be irrelevant, might be unsecure, any kind of feelings or thoughts that come with that, we can start to capture these here. So as I said, the key thing here is fundamentally, how do we get feedback from customer? This is just high enough quality that we can start to put in front of people, really to get the feedback to find out, should we start to invest in the real development of this as a product? It's nothing more than that. Not useful, absolutely. Early feedback, yep, true. Intuitive, possibly. Complicated, yep. Relevant. Okay, starting to get some good feedback here. Good looking. I'm surprised at that. That's always surprising when my design comes up with that. Slidey, yeah. Complicated, helpful. P, it's definitely P. Yeah, XD, yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Okay, so I think the key thing here, nothing that's come out that's really is not revolutionizing anyone's world here, but the key thing is there's enough, even without you interacting with it, to be able to solicit some feedback. So what does this start to look like on that Friday of the test? So quite often what we would do is we would have some users in a room. They'd be interacting with the app and somebody who understands a script and how to take them along on that journey in one room. And then what we would have in a different room is the group of people who've been along on the wake, and perhaps some other people who own budget and various different things, watching all of the interactions. I would have a crazy big wall like this where you can see the people that we'll be testing with, and you can start to see some of the potential areas along the verticals that we want to get feedback on. So for example, some of the feedback this week might have been, I don't want whiskey products that are limited to my personal phone. It's prohibition. Nobody wants to go to jail. Seems difficult to get this app from the store. It's very good. Schlangevat isn't a particularly easy thing to look up in the App Store, so how would you find it? I don't understand why I get a gift. Is the gift whiskey? So somebody is equally confused as whoever wrote confused up on the screen before. And then finally, how will these questions help me get good whiskey? And I would be as cynical as that as well. I like my whiskey. I know what I like. I'm not going to be believing that a little app is going to help me get better whiskey. So it doesn't sound like this is the kind of thing we want to be investing the organisational resources in. So, sprint number 1 is done, and it's as fast as that. You've got 5 days to explore the space. Let's take a look at sprint number 2. So we go back to our mapping exercise again. And to be honest, quite often what you would do here is perhaps pivot and try different variations of the same type of thing. But of course, this is a talk, and I take complete creative liberty with this, so we're going to do something entirely different this time. We're going to start to explore how we can increase customers' access to ordering whiskey. Now, we can skip past quite a lot of the first day. When you chain together design sprints, quite often you can complete subsequent ones in 2 or 3 days, because you've already built up a huge amount of knowledge and understanding. So here we can skip quickly to the sketching. We're going to start to explore, again, what do other industries do around the ordering space, and what do other companies that solve this type of problem, what do they do? And then we start to sketch out some of our own solutions. So, for example, you could have a flick button somewhere in the house. You're in the toilet or you're cooking in the kitchen, and you can just press the button. Suddenly there's whiskey on its way to you. Somebody else, again, Al Capone's coming up with a Facebook bot. Everybody must have a bot. We need to get that done. Someone else perhaps has come up with the idea of an Alexa skill. You know, what if there was something sitting in the living room, sitting in your kitchen, wherever, and you could just interact with it with your voice to get whatever whiskey that you want delivered. Well, we're on to deciding day already. We're moving at pace now. We've already got the context that we need. And quite quickly we realised that the dot voting's picking out voice interaction is quite an interesting way to explore this. It could be fun. So that's the route that we're going to take. So in this case, I used a tool called SafeSpring. Again, very straightforward, but it allows you to start to mock out some of those types of voice interactions. The prototyping, in this case, maybe took slightly longer, but really wasn't that difficult to do. You get a really useful, easy interface to work with for this. And you can start to come out with something like this. Hey, Alexa, can you open my prototypes, please?
Welcome to SafeSpring. The available projects are Schlange. Which project would you like to open?
Thanks, Alexa. You can be really polite because this is fake. Thanks, Alexa. Yeah, could you open Schlange for me, please?
Welcome to Schlange. What can I get you?
Well, I'd like 2 bottles of King's Ransom Whisky, please, freshly imported from Scotland.
Of course. 2 bottles of King's Ransom are now on their way to your friend's house. Can I get you anything else?
No, I think that's everything I need. Thank you.
Thank you for ordering. Schlange.
Now, like I said, everyone in this room knows that that's fake. When you put that in front of customers, really quite often they think that this is a real thing. You know, oh, can I actually get that on my Alexa? You know, honestly, it's unbelievable. But it is really as simple as that. That didn't take long at all to fake up, but it's enough to get the types of interactions that you need. So, here we are, testing day again. And time for all of you, once more, to start to give us some feedback. So, we looked the first time at the app and some strange kind of interactions and tastes and so on. This time we've got an Alexa skill. So, how would you feel? Alexa's sitting in your house. You're sitting one night watching Netflix thinking, I could really go a bottle of whiskey. You know, would that be interesting for you? Would you interact with this as a tool? I think some of the things that were starting to come out with the previous app design, of course, were concerns around privacy. Is this connected to my phone? Perhaps these, here we go. Fantastic, not secure. Weird, absolutely. I want it now, fantastic. Great, convenient, quick, fun, fast. Okay, this is a wife will here. Yeah. XD again. Yeah, I'm looking for a P somewhere. I'm sure someone's working on a P right now. Oh yeah, some cool stuff going on. Loudy. Pronunciation, yeah. Okay, so interesting. So they're starting to get a lot more feedback. Perhaps this is starting to hit a bit more on point with certain tastes or certain interactions and so on. Privacy concerns, completely agree. Okay, cool. So again, we're on that Friday, and we've got our massive wall of different post-its that we're capturing while we're watching people interacting and doing things over the course of the testing. What are some of the things that are coming back here? So, really convenient and natural. Interesting, I think someone had called that out. Somehow feels safer than an app, but I'm not sure that it is. It might be Alexa's voice. Interesting, so different ways that the voice is making people feel comfortable, but there's still enough doubt in there where someone's not willing to give up complete trust in this case. How can this be tracked back to me? Absolutely, that privacy concern is really key. And this would entice me to buy some good scotch. Well, this looks like something that Rothstein and his cronies might have a bit more success with, and it's probably really quite far from that original app idea. The key thing is, again, it's taken less than 5 days this time. It's taken 3 or 4 days to rapidly explore this, prototype it, and get it in front of customers. So that's the key thing. We're starting to get that rapid feedback. We're learning more about the market, more about the products, more about the environment, more about people all the time. So, third sprint. I said we would run through 3 sprints today. So here we get to the third one. Again, I'm going to take some more creative liberty, and I'm going to explore how can we allow customers to sample before they buy. Perhaps slightly trickier. So again, we've got all the context built up. We don't need to do our full 5-day design sprint process. So immediately we start sketching. So how do Netflix handle this? How does Audi work with it? Toyota, Amazon? You know, who are some of the key organisations and businesses that are working in this type of space. And then we move on to sketching. So someone comes up with the idea of Tinder for whiskey, swipe left, swipe right, all that kind of thing. Perhaps someone comes up with the idea for some kind of online to offline interaction. So some kind of whiskey tasting event, you fill out a form. Again, it sounds a little bit weird and privacy concerns and their data concerns. Someone else comes up with an idea of what if you had a bottle? And that bottle perhaps had a hidden compartment that you could put whiskey in. And then that way, you're able to take advantage of the infrastructure, the postal service, and so on, to transport about your whiskey all over America, despite it being prohibition, right under the nose of the officials. So we're on to deciding day. We're rapidly moving through that third week. And we start to dot vote again. So which of these options is going to work? And in this case, a bottle comes out. So we've got not very long, we have to explore it very quickly. So straight away we start moving into storyboarding. So you need to have some kind of bottle, some kind of, the types of thing that you would get in a nice cosmetic counter perhaps. It's going to have some kind of hidden compartment, some kind of test tube of some kind. Perhaps a key that allows you to unlock something that's in a hidden position, tucked away behind a sticker or something. It's all going to insert inside each other. Of course, we're dealing with high society people, so everything has to look beautiful. It has to be presented and give a real moment of excitement when people receive that through the door. But prototyping. So we can prototype apps, we can prototype voice. How do you start to prototype these types of physical things? Well, I'll be honest, I don't have the CAD skills to design something like that. But I found this guy, Darko, on Upwork. So Darko has all of the skills necessary, and after a few awkward interactions where I talk about smuggling and so on, he's able to then share with me a film of this kind of 3D mock-up of how that could look. So in all honesty here, Darko perhaps came back after a couple of days, but nonetheless, this is still fast-moving enough that you don't need to invest in 6 months or a year worth of development to find out it's a flop. It's a couple of days of work. So this is a key that would perhaps open up on the underside, some kind of hidden cap with a lock in it that allows you to lock the whiskey into place. So that felt like it was starting to be something useful that we could maybe put in front of customers. Maybe we could show them the design and let them see it. But I want you to go a little bit further than that. So this here, I found someone, I live in Sweden at the moment, and I found a guy called Joachim, again on an online system, 3D Hubs. And Joachim, he's retired now, he used to work in R&D, and he built this 3D printer himself. So this is entirely his construct, and again, after some very difficult conversations about why I wanted to pretend to smuggle things, he very kindly offered to print the bottle for me. So this is the actual bottle here. And then if we just take a look, here is the very swanky cosmetic bag that the high society would be very pleased to receive from the postal services. And in here you'll find we have the bottle that looks like an Aesop bottle or something you get in a cosmetic shelf. You can see the key, hopefully. All of this was 3D printed from those designs. If I unlock this, you can see in the bottom you've got a test tube here. This test tube is actually one of the things that you blow out into being a bottle for soda. And then if I unlock this, you can see that could contain the whiskey. So again, very quickly we've been able to explore the problem space and figure out a way that could potentially allow us to deliver whiskey right under the nose of the authorities. So testing. Again, time for you all to start voting and giving some feedback. So, as I said, we looked at the app, we interacted with the app, and it was a bit strange and a bit complicated and confusing. We moved on to some voice interaction. If you're sitting in your living room watching Netflix or a couple of bottles of King's Ransom, please, that's perhaps quite useful. Now we're looking at actually prototyping a physical thing, something that can be delivered, something that can go through the post, deliver real whiskey samples to people. So we've got smart, tricky, clever, awesome. Where is my whiskey? I drank it before coming out here. But, useful, elaborate, funny. So what I really like about this is each time there's more and more feedback coming back. And hopefully, we've got P. Thank you, whoever put P in there. Fantastic. Too small, that's fair. Well, I think the idea with this, of course, is you would get a sample. If you like the sample, then you could perhaps get more. But much more positive stuff, some fantastic emojis in there this time. So if we start to take a look at what the feedback would perhaps be on the Friday, again, we've got our panel of people together, all watching on a big screen how people are interacting with the product. You could fake the entire interaction. In this case, you could fake the delivery people coming up to the door, here's your cosmetic, give them instructions, watch them unravel it. You could get really, really good feedback on the overall interaction. But in this case, people are saying, I love that it's a hidden secret compartment. So that's quite exciting for them. This feels exciting, and I get a sample of whiskey. Fantastic. I like that I can try before I buy, I can be more adventurous. So that's something that's really going to be beneficial for Rothstein and his team. They're going to be able to try out much more exciting, adventurous whiskies, sell more product ultimately. And I think I might have a sampling party with friends. So you never know, there might be another aspect of a business idea in there where you help people to set up different types of parties. So hopefully now you can see in a very short period of time, as long as you're faking those interactions rather than trying to build them, you can actually go through a very deep exploration of a problem space, an opportunity space, at least deep enough to get enough initial understanding to try things. You can sketch solutions, you can prototype them, and you can have that customer feedback within 3, 4, 5 days. It's a really quick process. But people know that already about design sprints. And what I said today at the start, of course, was this can help you really start to reframe people's minds within the enterprise. This can get people to start moving faster and moving at pace and not investing in huge pre-studies and 6 months of planning before actually getting started. And if you think about this and you go back to things like agile principles, really this is truly individuals and interactions over process and tools. One of those key manifesto statements. Individuals and interactions are in there in that very beginning. This, again, is maybe not working software, but it's at very least working prototypes over comprehensive documentation. We've not sat down and created documents and Word documents and PDFs and stuff. This is all about getting product in the hands of customers and getting feedback as to whether or not we should be doing stuff. It's all about customer collaboration over contract negotiation. There's no contracts in here. We're trying a thing. People might like it, they might not like it, but we learn, and it's constrained in time and it's constrained in cost. So there's really very little risk if we want to go further. And then, of course, responding to change over following a plan. Within 5 days, if you get that quality of feedback from that number of people, you know whether you really want to continue or you want to try something else. And that's responded to change truly. You're getting something in front of customers, you're taking steps to learn and do something new. And finally, just before I finish, I gave this talk a couple of years ago in Copenhagen, and it was just before, it was the second last talk, just before Linda Rising giving the closing keynote. And I'm a massive Linda Rising fan. If anyone doesn't watch any of her talks, you should pick them up on YouTube. She's fantastic. And I found out right at the last moment that Linda Rising was going to be giving a talk about experimentation. Oh, God, how can you do this? Going out to talk about this kind of stuff right before someone who really knows about this is going to do the closing keynote. But the reality is it worked out well, and one of the key things that she said, and I absolutely love this, is really what is agile? It's a culture of people willing to learn. That's my definition of agile. And I think that is really what design sprints are around. Thank you.